Hey y'all, welcome back. We having every episode today. Yeah, see you guys now. I have music. I have finally I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So just bear with me. I'm just trying to, trying new stuff, changing up the background, just, doing what I can. But the most important part is the content. So welcome back to Leadership Lessons. I am Dr. Fredrick D II, and this is the podcast where we explore the human side of leadership through emotional intelligence, lived experience, and the power of personal transformation. Over the last few episodes, we've taken a deep dive into the series that's both personal and profound, looking at how self-efficacy, resilience, and identity shape the experiences of Black women navigating breast cancer, and how those same qualities influence the way we lead, heal, and grow. We began with bonus episode 7, Self-Efficacy, Resilience, and Health, where we explore the power of belief, that inner conviction that says, I can do this, even in the face of fear and uncertainty. Then in bonus episode 8, Healthcare at the Intersections, we examined how race, gender, and trust collide in the fight for health equity and what it takes to rebuild faith in systems that have not always been fair. Today, we bring that journey full circle with a conversation that is both deeply human and profoundly hopeful. What it means to live beyond survival. Because surviving breast cancer or any life altering challenge is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one. It's where healing meets identity, where faith meets leadership, and where the personal becomes universal. As someone who has studied how self-efficacy and resilience intersect with race, gender, and health, I've learned that real leadership is born from lived experience. And today's guest embodies that truth beautifully. I am honored to welcome my guest, Dr. Cynthia Payne, a woman whose career and story both model what it means to lead with purpose, excellence, and empathy. Dr. Payne has built a remarkable career in healthcare, beginning with direct patient care as a technologist and growing into leadership as a department director and accreditation surveyor. Her work demonstrates an unwavering passion for quality imaging services, equitable access to care, and the advancement of health education. Today, Dr. Payne serves as an educator, leading the radiologic technology program for Sutter Health, where she continues to inspire the next generation of healthcare professionals. But beyond the titles and accomplishments, Dr. Payne is also a breast cancer survivor, an advocate, and a leader whose story reminds us that healing is not only physical, it is emotional, spiritual, and deeply personal. So let's bring her into the room. I'm cool with the time that you have given me, but yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation because, your story not only connects to so many themes that, we've explored in this series this month during breast cancer awareness, self-efficacy, resilience, intersectionality, and emotional intelligence. So your story also gives us something we rarely get to hear, which is a leader's perspective from inside the survivor's journey. So let's start the conversation by going back to that moment. Can you take us back to when you first received your diagnosis? What went through your mind? How did you process it? Not just as a patient, but as a leader who has spent a career helping others through moments such as this.
It was a bit perplexing at first, just like any other process when you have bad news, the four things that you go through, denial, acceptance and all that. I went through that, but I think it was more denial than anything because I said, me with breast cancer, all I've done in the background is be an advocacy for breast cancer screening ever since I was a girl. I was a advocate for breast cancer screening, did seminars and mobile mammography, back in the day when I was a young x-ray tech with a company that was part of our portfolio of services. So when they called me back for an additional view, I was on my way out of the country, going for my annual mammogram though was
Right.
part of my being.
Right.
I was gonna get my mammogram done, and I said, "It'll be alright, I'll just get the results when I get back." Well, they tried to get me before I left, and I couldn't go because the day that they wanted me to go, I was getting on a plane to fly out. So, got back and got busy with work, then I caught COVID and couldn't get the additional view. So, in my mind, I'm sure that everything is fine anyway. I'm not sure why I gotta go back again because they had been following this condition with me personally for since I was 25, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, so when I did go back and they said, "Oh, we need to do a biopsy." I'm like, "A biopsy?" And then that's when it hit me. Do I have breast? And lo and behold, I did. So, you know, my thing, the type of person I am, okay, we've identified a problem, right? We've identified a problem. What's
Yeah.
the resolution?
Right.
Surgery.
Yeah.
So when the surgery, it feels kind of suspicious. And this was after the ultrasound. I said, "We're going to have to do surgery." I said, "Well, can you do it today?" She said, "Today?" I said, "Yeah, don't you have a knife next door that you can just come and cut it out?" I said, "I want this thing out of me." It was my 65th birthday. It was my birthday present, the uninvited guest. In my mind, I thought that I had escaped all the chronic diseases, but
Right.
I did not know until I started more research that the prevalence of breast cancer in women like me over 60 is beginning to be a trend.
Oh, you've spent years working in healthcare. So what was it like being on the other side of that experience, actually having to receive care? How did that shift your perspective on empathy, trust, patient-centered leadership?
Well, we have to there are things, you're at the mercy of someone else, and luckily, I had very attentive surgeon that understood where I came from. So
Hmm.
it wasn't like she was gonna try to cut me corners with me, not say certain things to me, it was a whole 9 thing with diagrams and everything, right?
Right.
Physician's assistant, and even all the nurses down in the OR, they understood my situatedness and knew where I came from. So I don't want to say I got special treatment, but I got more explanation is what I want to call it sometimes.
Hmm.
So I do think that healthcare is in a place where they are treating patients better. At least from my experience, good treatment, good follow up treatment, the breast care navigators work real well to coordinate your care from point A to point B. The thing that we need to do as patients, though, even though I'm really hard headed and you know me, you've been on me for a good while, that's one thing that I always did. I always went for that annual mammogram, grunting my teeth and dragging my heels. But there isn't a provider that's been my primary care, physician that could say I'm an easy patient because 'cause I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
very non-compliant patient that has an opinion about your opinion,
Hmm.
even though he's the MD, right?
Yeah.
But they are, providers that I've had, and this is the key for any woman, whether they're black, white, or blue, but especially African American patients.
Hmm.
You have to have a provider that you trust. And if you trust your provider and your provider tells you to do something, the studies show that you're going to be more compliant to do what he says, i.e., screening exams.
Yeah.
And I've been that compliant person. Had I not been, I don't
Hmm.
know where I'd be.
Yeah, yeah. You
You
hit
know,
on something. In my research, in my dissertation research, we looked at, or I found that self-efficacy, having that belief in your ability to influence outcomes was a key factor in
hmm
how the women were able to navigate their breast cancer journey. It literally shaped how they made decisions, how they engaged with their care team, and how they approached recovery. So, how did self efficacy show up for you during your breast cancer journey?
being the unique patient or person that I think that I am, and sometimes it's all in your head what you think, but I have a really challenging time when outside things are introduced, i.e., medications,
Mhm.
treatments. I'm always that patient that gets to not the worst side effect, but a side effect that's not really common. So, one thing I found in the beginning, the doctors were like, well, that usually doesn't happen. I said, I know, but I'm just telling you how I am. So, some of the things that I tried to tell the doctors, they started listening after a while because
Mhm.
whatever it is about my DNA, you introduce something new, my body is going to say, no, what is this? We don't want to do this.
Yeah.
What you mean you need this? And it
Yeah.
will shut down, drive me crazy until
Yeah.
I say, hey, we need to do this,
Yeah.
i.e., radiation therapy.
Mhm.
Being on the other side of being a patient in radiation therapy, and they said, oh, you won't feel anything. They said, but there are some patients that do,
And you did.
you know, well, I've been in diagnostic imaging for 46 years. When
Right.
that beam came on, I'm like, said heat.
Got a little warm, huh? Got a little
It
warm.
got a little warm. It's like, uh, for me, I could physically feel it attacking that area because it's targeted.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed to be in the technology age that we're in
Yeah.
because, say, even 15 years ago, without the targeted treatment, the whole breast would get radiated, that whole side would get radiated. So, women need to understand also that we're in a really good place technology wise, where things are more controlled and breast cancer is no longer a death sentence. It's very, very treatable, but the caveat is there's nothing else that we can do as women to detect breast cancer except to go for those annual mammograms or however often your provider recommends. That is so
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to stay on your regular screening schedule. So you brought up the point of technology, which is one of the themes that came up related to intersectionality and actually having access to advanced technology, 3D mammograms and things of that nature, MRI breast, ultrasound breast. So, as a Black woman and a healthcare leader, how did the intersectionality impact your experience with your diagnosis, your treatment, and communication with providers?
Providers are still being guided, especially for imaging studies, of
Mhm.
what should happen and what does happen. MRI is still such a sensitive area that brings forth more diagnosis than what it should. In my particular case, everything was localized to one area. Ultrasound, I felt like ultrasound and mammography was more than adequate to get the procedures and get the diagnosis to treat my condition.
Mhm.
But what does happen, and I'm a regular patient, is the timing. Now, timing for me was like long, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that I got some sort of preferential treatment because I work in diagnostic imaging.
Mhm.
So from diagnosis to surgery, 3 weeks maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe 3 weeks. And I insisted that you need to get me on the surgery schedule.
Mhm.
So I thought that was a long time. I think in our own department, from screening to diagnosis was a long time. I say if I had the screening mammogram in beginning of December, they were calling me mid to late December for the follow up. And that's when
Mm.
that's when the time got added on because it was the holiday then. Even if
Right.
I wasn't born anywhere, it was a holiday. Do you really want a cancer diagnosis on
Mhm.
Christmas Day? Even though
Right.
I've talked to some of my colleagues and lo and behold, that's when they were diagnosed over the Christmas
Hmm.
holiday.
Interesting.
But,
Very interesting.
I do think that we, healthcare, need to do better and need to be more, time conscious. When a woman has a positive mammogram and getting them in for the next steps. To me,
So
that took a long for me, it took a long time. but
Yeah.
it really wasn't, but it took a long time. 3 weeks is a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
And that's with your advanced knowledge and experience because you come from diagnostic imaging. So this is occurring. So you know
Correct.
the steps
Yeah.
along the way. So you know what comes next. You know how long it's supposed to take. That makes it easier for you to advocate for yourself and call these things out because you have that knowledge of the process that most patients don't have. So they don't know how long it's supposed to take. They don't know what comes next, so they're dependent on the system informing them and communicating with them along the way so that they know when what to expect and when. Now,
During my journey when I was still a leader in diagnostic imaging,
mhm,
remember we came up with a process where you had a positive screening, a mammogram, and you got your biopsy the same day.
same day.
That is the optimal way, honestly, and if most women's centers could adopt that model in some way, shape, or form, it would be a happier female
Yeah.
population. But
Yeah.
then again, some people wanna know that quickly. But there are those of us that wanna know, "Hey, let's get this over with,
Mhm.
whatever it is." I don't wanna be fooling around with this for 3 or 4 weeks.
Right. It's having the option, right? Some patients need time to process what's happening. And so they may not want to go from screening to diagnostic in a day. Or even if they're extremely efficient, diagnostic to biopsy in the same day, right? Or
Right.
tomorrow, right? Next day biopsies, things like that. Patients may need to have time to think about that, to talk about it with, their family members. And I think the system should allow that, right? That level of, okay, I can
Mm.
decide for myself when I want to do these things, so long as they have been, properly informed. Now, you and I both know that leadership is not just technical, right? It's also emotional. So it's about, how we show up in moments of uncertainty and vulnerability. So how did self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, how did those emotional intelligence components play a role in your healing journey?
I didn't let them in, and I do
Okay.
think that that was, probably the wrong thing to do.
Mhm.
During my radiation treatments, I just kept on working. That
Mhm.
was my escape, I think.
Mm.
I had radiation treatments, say, this time of day, I
Mhm.
would have my radiation treatment because it's at the end of the day. Then I would come home and collapse because the radiation treatments would harsh on my body where it made me fatigued. I would sleep all night, get up and go to work the next day.
Mm.
I didn't really talk about it. Yeah, I didn't really talk about it. There were times that I couldn't function at work and all I could do was laugh. I said,
Yeah.
"Well, why are you here?" Everybody said, because in radiology, you're a family, and everybody said, "Aren't you going through radiation treatments?" I said, "Yeah."
Mhm.
"Yeah." They said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I would not be here." And then the leader in diagnostic images said, "Well, so and so," and the people that she said that had breast cancer, they had already confided in me. It wasn't like she was violating any PHI or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we were just having conversation. Actually, she was trying to, console me as to say, maybe you should think about taking some time off.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. But that was the denial part. And I've
Mhm.
gone through the whole journey just like that. But retrospectively, you must take care of your emotional health. I didn't give it time because that was my escapism, but
Mhm.
other people need time. Most people need time to process things. So, I would get up in the morning and my thing would be I would get this imaginary eraser and erase all those thoughts that I had about the
Mhm.
treatment the day before and
Mhm.
all that. Even though I was dragging myself one leg, some mornings that took a little bit longer than what I thought because physically I couldn't get myself together.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
just had radiation treatment.
Right. Right.
But I didn't I do think that people need to stop
Yeah.
and recognize and listen to your body and make sure that you give yourself time to heal. That's my
Absolutely.
advice. Being a
Absolutely.
leader and, the job would have been great there. They were for a change, I should say, as
Mhm.
being a leader. They were very supportive. They even my leadership said, "Don't you wanna take a couple of days off?" I'm like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
That's how
goodness.
my life is, I guess.
Yeah, how has surviving and healing influenced the way you approach mentorship, leadership, teaching? How has that changed?
I always wanted my successors, now that I'm in an education role and not in operations, to
Mhm,
be in my field because our field in diagnostic imaging is such a vital part of the healthcare chain. People
mhm,
don't really understand how important we are. So that was part of it. Then when I got into education, of course, I want to ensure that some of the students become mammography techs. There's still a lot of world out there that really doesn't understand what diagnostic imaging does and who we are, and I'm shocked. But I'm
mhm,
on a journey now for awareness. Now I always was dedicated to women's health, whether it's the young women that need cervical cancer screening, or as you age, and it's breast cancer screening and lung cancer screening, heart disease screening. Always been an advocate since the 90s for women's health.
mhm.
Now I'm living proof
Right,
that uh, if you adhere to the screening guidelines, especially for mammography, they'll
right.
catch it early and
Mhm,
it will not be a game changer, but so much. Of course, it's changed my life somewhat. The medications that I have to take to decrease the breast cancer from coming back, because my cancer was estrogen based.
mhm,
My body is too dumb to know that I'm too old to be producing a whole bunch of estrogen. So they had to give me medicine to help it stop.
mhm. Okay.
Well, to help my body stop producing estrogen has wreaked havoc on my body,
Mhm,
where, I have joint pain every day. I have tried several different medications, hormone reducing medicines to not have joint pain, but
mhm.
none have worked yet. I'm on
Oh,
the last one. I even tried the holistic brand.
yeah.
So, that's a journey that I have to after the cancer is diagnosed, you're
Mhm.
still dealing with how to manage for it not to come back.
Right,
And
right.
that's the journey that I'm on right now. I
Yeah,
was blessed enough for the cancer to be eradicated, but to reduce your likelihood of getting the cancer again, you have a whole 'nother journey to go down.
the journey
And
survivorship,
I was
yeah.
prepared
Mhm.
for the surgery. I was prepared for the radiation treatment, but
Yeah.
nobody told me about this one. This
Mm.
right here is probably because it's a 5-year journey.
Yeah.
I have to take hormone reducing medicine for 5 years to reduce the likelihood of cancer coming back. I wasn't prepared for this journey. I
Yeah.
wasn't. So,
Yeah.
it's a work in progress. You just
Right.
keep moving is all I can say.
Right. Yeah.
You
Your
know?
story doesn't end at survival. You've transformed your experience into purpose, right? You
Mhm.
continued that advocacy and education. So, what has inspired you to share your story? How has that work become part of your mission?
Well, I've always been one to share stories. You've known
Mhm,
me for a long time. If I can't do
mhm,
anything, I can talk. But one thing that really perplexed me?
mhm.
Okay, so I call myself being a responsible family member.
Right.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I contacted my first cousin, my father's sister's children, sisters
Mhm,
and brothers, female children,
mhm,
and my mother's sister's children. Nobody on my mom's side had, breast cancer that they know of. But you know what? My first cousins on my father's side told me, say, "Oh, didn't you know Aunt so and so had it?" "Yeah,
mhm,
and my mom had it." I was like,
mhm.
"What?"
Right.
I said, and the perplexing part was I used to talk to her mother every Sunday, and her mother
Mhm.
never mentioned it. What she would always, her gripe would always be about her heart problems because she
Yeah.
lived but she just passed away about 2, 3 years ago. I
Mhm.
used to me or my brother because she was the last sibling left on my father's side. So we
Okay.
promised that we were gonna keep in touch with her,
Yeah.
and she never mentioned that she had breast cancer. So I'm thinking that I'm an anomaly in my family, and
Yeah.
I'm not the first female to have breast cancer.
You're not.
And it gets worse.
Oh, mercy.
My father father's sister's daughter died of breast cancer before age 60. And this was maybe about 4 years ago.
Mm.
So I call myself coming out, and
Yeah.
telling everybody. And
Yeah.
cancer had been around me, circled me,
All up
and
and
I
through
didn't even
all up and
know.
through.
So I said, yeah. So I said, I know that I am not the only person, African American person that has experienced this with breast cancer or mental illness or
Yeah.
something like that. I
Yeah.
said, people need to stop treating it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's things we all should share.
Yeah.
Maybe what I say could make someone else's journey a little bit. Oh, yeah, if you do the radiation treatments, go to sleep an hour before. I'm just making that up. But,
Yeah.
as we talk about it and share things, who
Mhm.
knows? That might help the next person.
Well, you could be saving
I mean,
someone's life. Yeah, absolutely. So for the women who may be listening to this and they may be at the start of their own breast cancer diagnosis or somewhere in between, on their way to survivorship, what encouragement would you offer them about finding meaning and hope on the other side?
all I can say is whatever supreme being that you believe in,
Hmm.
because I can't speak to all religions, or even if you have to believe in something other than this earth,
Right.
then you need to confide in that person or whoever that's affiliated with that.
Hmm.
Also, try to keep a positive attitude.
Hmm.
The more you share, lift it away from you because you shared it with somebody else. They
Hmm.
may give you information to put your heart at ease. So if you keep it all bottled up to yourself, then all that's going to do is raise your blood pressure, raise your blood sugar, because you still have all those other things to deal with while you're doing all this. But let me tell you this side of the story. While I'm going through this journey and doing what I do best, talk, I was talking to my little goddaughter. Well, she's not so little anymore. She's 16.
Hmm.
Her mother. Her mother is in her early 40s. So I was sharing with her my journey. And then just out of the clear blue sky, she says, well, I've had this lump under my arm for a long time. I said, what are you talking about? She said, yes, big too. I said, have you gone to the doctor? I said, go to the doctor.
Right.
Go to the doctor.
Right.
Go to the doctor. I was diagnosed in May of 2024.
Mhm.
She started going to the doctor in April. She didn't get her mammogram results until June. Right. Covered
Wow.
California, they treat patients differently.
Hmm.
She's not African American, but she's Hispanic. Well, it was a very large carcinoma. This young lady is, like I said, she in her early 50s.
Hmm.
Before they could even operate on it,
Hmm.
they did chemo to
Mm.
shrink the tumor. That's how big it was. It was as big as a tennis ball underneath her arm. After they did chemo,
Mhm.
then they did radiation. After they did radiation and it got down to a certain size, that's
Mhm.
when they did surgery. Before they could remove the cancer, it
Mhm.
took them a year to get it right, to get the tumor down to size. Now, I was fortunate again. My tumor was only 1.2 uh, millimeters. It was little.
Yeah.
Hers was almost the size of a golf ball underneath her arm.
Yeah.
And she's a young woman. She
Right.
just stopped
Mhm.
the chemo and the radiation and all that. But here again, if I hadn't shared with her that I had breast cancer,
Right.
maybe she wouldn't have never even went to the doctor.
She woulda just kept on
I
going.
kept saying, "Oh, it's nothing, it's nothing." I said, "At
Mhm.
least go get it checked. Maybe
Yeah.
it is nothing."
Right.
But it turned out to be a cancer worse than mine.
Right. Absolutely.
Plus she lump.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you definitely brought awareness to her because, woo,
Wow, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that could
yeah.
have had a different outcome.
Yep, yep, it hadn't metastasized even though it was huge. It
Yeah.
hadn't metastasized. That's the thing that young lady's like. And she
Yeah.
said, if you didn't insist on me going to the doctors, I don't think I would have gone."
Mm,
And I just looked at her. That's what I said. Mm.
right.
So along the way, hopefully I'll encourage people to we don't have a lot of resources at our fingertips. But
Right.
screening mammography is one of those things that we do.
Hmm.
So do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Payne, I want to thank you not just for sharing your story, but for living your leadership so transparently. Your journey is a masterclass in emotional intelligence, courage, and faith. And it reminds us that leadership isn't about titles or credentials, it's about presence, purpose, and persistence. Thank you once again for joining
Absolutely.
me today as
One
my
last
very
thing I
first
like to share
guest.
with you.
Yeah.
I'll share with you that I had my 3-month follow-up mammogram,
Mhm.
2 weeks ago, and now I'm on an annual mammogram path because that was negative. So I'm getting back
Awesome.
to
Awesome. Yes, we're gonna clap for
yes,
that. That is good news. Absolutely good news. So I'll take that. Well,
yes.
thank you
Well,
so
thank
much
you so
again.
much for inviting me,
No problem. No problem.
because I just wanna get the word out there to,
Mhm.
women that
Right.
perhaps even younger that younger than me to please use the tools that are available to you. Pap
Right.
smears for cervical cancer,
Mhm.
mammograms for mammography.
Right.
If there's a family history of lung cancer or even heart disease, that's
Correct.
another killer in women. You have to have self-awareness and know your body when and recognize when something's wrong, if possible, because I didn't feel a thing. Yep.
Well, I thank you once again for joining us. You are welcome back anytime, anytime. And you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we will connect soon.
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me, and I'll see you around next project, okay?
All right. You take care.
Alright. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Every episode of Leadership Lessons ends with those change moves, the practical actions to help you apply what you've heard. Here are today's change moves inspired by our conversation with Dr. Cynthia Payne. Healing isn't linear, it's layered. Recognize that physical recovery is only one dimension. Emotional, mental, and spiritual healing are equally essential. Self awareness allows us to acknowledge where we are without shame or denial. You have to reclaim your voice. Advocacy begins the moment you choose to speak up for yourself, whether in a doctor's office, a meeting, or a moment of doubt. Your voice matters. Assertiveness paired with empathy turns fear into influence. Build a circle of strength. Healing multiplies in community. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your worth, especially when you forget it yourself. Empathy and social skill help us build spaces where resilience can grow. Thriving doesn't mean back to normal. It means creating a new normal, one rooted in peace, purpose, and authenticity. Self regard and optimism transform adversity into opportunity. And finally, lead through your story. Your experiences, both the pain and the progress, hold power. Don't hide them. Someone else's healing may depend on your courage to share. Emotional expression invites connection, and connection fuels change. Healing is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of leadership. This conversation with Dr. Cynthia Payne reminds us that survival is not the finish line. It's the foundation. It's the place where we start asking new questions. Who am I? What does healing really mean? And how can my story serve others? The truth is, leadership and healing share the same DNA. Both require courage, both require honesty, and both demand that we face ourselves, not just our successes, but our scars. When we lead with emotional intelligence, when we bring empathy, awareness, and self belief into our work and our relationships, we create something lasting. We create cultures where healing is honored, where voice and equity matter, where survival becomes a story of transformation. So as you move forward today, remember, your pain does not disqualify you from leadership, it deepens it. Your story is not an interruption in your journey. It is your journey. And your healing is not just personal, it's generational. Subscribe today to Leadership Lessons with Dr. Fredrick Lee on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. You can also visit leadershiplessons.transistor.fm for more episodes and conversations that connect emotional intelligence to real world leadership. Until next time, be aware, be resilient, lead with emotional intelligence. I'm Dr. Fredrick D.